Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Chaldean Cultural Center discussion series that is in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. And today we have yet another special guest that is going to be talking about the Aramaic language. But he has, well, first I'm going to introduce his bio a little bit, which is just incredible. Dr. Rocco Errico. He's an ordained minister, an international lecturer and author, spiritual counselor, and one of the nation's leading biblical scholars working from the original Aramaic Peshitta texts. Welcome, Dr. Errico.
Thank you.
And I've been hearing a lot about you from Roy Gafford because I know that he's the publisher of some of your books.
Right.
And he has spoken to me about several things, including a school that you are starting called the Aramaic School of Light, which I believe has started already, or it's in the process?
No, it starts in February.
Oh, cool. Okay, perfect. So there's plenty of time for people to register. So we would love to hear about that. So Dr. Errico, what was very fascinating, I was telling you about this, I've been listening to a lot of the interviews that you have done, and what I got from them is the essence of the Aramaic language that was spoken by Jesus, how in translating the Bible from its original Aramaic language to the Greek language, the shift that has created and maybe not really fully getting Jesus's word correctly to us. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, yes. Well, we see what happened is, of course, in all of our universities and colleges, they all teach you that Greek was the first. When Jesus' teachings were written, they said it was written in Greek first before anything else. But where my platform and where I come from, Aramaic comes first, Greek comes second. And so there's a big difference in Jesus' teachings. Everything Jesus did, everything he said, all of his healings, everything he did was all in the ancient Aramaic language. No one can disagree with that. He didn't say anything in Greek. Everything he did was in Lishana Aramaya, in this language. And so this is why it's important when you read the New Testament to read it from his language. And when you go from Aramaic to Greek, they didn't understand how to translate some of those Aramaic terminologies which are left in the Gospels and left in Paul's writings, and they were literally translated and the meaning got lost. For example, they didn't, and they still battle over the Lord's Prayer. And today, your scholars do. You know, do not lead us into temptation. Of course, God isn't going to lead you into temptation. Why do people pray it? Don't imagine God, who is love and light and truth and all of that, is going to lead you into temptation? No way. In Aramaic, the word is la tatlan, siona, which is, and do not let us enter into temptation, which is a big difference. In other words, keep me out of trouble. That's exactly what it's saying in the prayer. And so, but they didn't know quite how to do it, and they still don't to this day. They try to say, do not bring me to the test, and all these different translations to try and explain where it's plain and simple in the Aramaic language. And what's so interesting, when I was in Spain, you know, I've lectured all over Europe. When I was in Spain, I saw in Spanish, because I can read Spanish also, and the way they translated it surprised me because it was more like the Aramaic rather than the Greek. That's just one example.
Well, how were you introduced to the Aramaic language? And that got you to the point where you're that involved, where you, in some of the videos I watch, you lead your discussions with an Aramaic prayer?
Yes.
How did you get to that point? How did you discover the Aramaic language, and what made you decide that you want to pursue it to this extent?
Well, I always, in school, they do teach that Jesus spoke Aramaic. What they do not teach is that it was the major language of Israel during that time. It was the major language. And I have plenty of scholarship to back that up. That was the spoken language throughout. And all in the synagogues, everything was done with Aramaic targums, which is interpretation in Aramaic. They would read from the ancient Hebrew, which was pronounced differently and everything, but everything was explained in Aramaic to all the Jewish people, everything. The two holy languages of the ancient world was Aramaic and Hebrew. Those were the two holy languages. Okay, so how did I get involved? I was teaching on the north side. I was pastoring at that time in San Antonio, Texas. I was only in my 20s. And this is in about 1960, well, the early 60s, 1960s. And I was in my 20s then. And I was teaching the book of Genesis in the usual way from Hebrew, and then they wanted me to do the New Testament, and they wanted the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. And I said, I won't do it. And they said, why won't you teach on that last book of the New Testament? I said, because it's full of all kinds of negativity, and God's going to do this, destroy that. I said, I can't believe God's going to do all that. And so they said, then I made a statement. They said, well, I said to them, it will take a Near Easterner to unlock the symbols of the Near East, because they're all symbolic. I knew that much. And so they said, the house that I was in lecturing these group of was about 20, 25 people. It was a mixed group, mixed denomination, Episcopal and Pentecostal and all. There was just a mixed group of people there. And when I made that statement, the owner of the house said to me, Mr. and Mrs. Lucas, they said, stay, don't leave. So I stayed, and they said, we heard an Assyrian doctor talk at the university. And I said, you did? He said, yes. And he translated the entire Bible from Aramaic into English. I said, well, really? And he says, and we have one of his books. And he happened to comment on the book of the Revelation. And he also wrote a book on my neighbor Jesus. So they brought me into their library, gave me both those books. It says, you may read these. And since you made the statement, it takes a Near Easterner to unlock Eastern symbols. So I said, okay. And they said, if you like it, you can keep those books. I said, all right. So I got home that night, and because I taught in the evening at this house. And when I got home, I never went to bed. I opened up the book and started reading. I thought, this is what as a minister, this is what I've been waiting for a long, long time. It opened up Jesus and brought him so close to me, I could not believe it. I felt now I knew our Lord personally because of the way he was portrayed. His humanness was portrayed. His Near Eastern background was portrayed. His, a side of, I believe in the holiness of Jesus, of course. But aside from that, where I could fully relate to him, that's what the Aramaic, learning it from the Aramaic did to me. It transformed me. And I began to see how open Jesus was. And instead of just as a book, became more real to me. And it changed the congregation too. I mean, I started reading from the Aramaic translation. I started teaching. I threw out all the Sunday school literature. I said, we're not using none of this literature anymore. And so I threw it all out. And I said, I'm teaching I taught the Sunday school teachers, and the Sunday school teachers taught the children. And the children started bringing home all the knowledge that they were getting about Near Eastern culture, about the Aramaic language, all that. And the parents got very upset. How come we're not getting this? Because I was teaching the Sunday school teachers. And then everyone started coming to me at the church, said, we want it now ourselves. I said, okay, you can attend my classes. I teach. And when I teach the teachers, so you can hear what I'm representing. And some of them liked it, some of them didn't. Some of them were just nothing but they wanted just the Greek and not the Aramaic. I said, that's fine. I'm just telling you what's there for the Aramaic and what it's done for me. And that's all I can do. That's all I can tell you. And of course, but the church did go completely for the Aramaic. And then I started getting churches coming from all in San Antonio, from other churches. They heard about it. It spread all over San Antonio. And so I had to teach after doing a Sunday service, I had to teach a Sunday afternoon, and I had 400 and 500 people attending on Sunday afternoon just to hear the Aramaic. And that's what started me. And then I had to get a hold of this Dr. George M. Lamsa, know more about him, know about where he came from, and why he did the translation in Aramaic, why is it so important. And that's when I discovered there are about 12,000 differences between coming from Aramaic into English than coming from the Greek. God is not a jealous God. God is zealous. The Aramaic is zealous, not jealous. And in the Lord's Prayer, do not lead us into temptation. It's do not let us enter into temptation in Aramaic. And the words on the cross, El, Mana Schwachten. My God, for this, the full meaning of it, and I have ancient Aramaic church fathers, Odisho, who absolutely say that Jesus was not forsaken on the cross on what we call it Good Friday here, but in the Near East they call it Suffering Friday. So there was a big difference there. And that was in the early 1960s, and I've been teaching it ever since. And that's what changed me. That's what transformed me.
You know, watching you talk about that, listening to you, and watching you, because I can tell the intimate relationship that you're talking about that does much resemble our community's way of relationship. I was once in a Bible class in an American church, and then we were talking about our relationship with Jesus. And I remember one thing I said, and when it started, and I said, well, we kind of just grew up with this relationship. It's kind of in our blood, like he's part of our, that consciousness, that spirit is part of our community. And so right now you're kind of sharing that it's about that intimacy more than about just like the reading aspect of it. And my mom, my father was very educated, but my mom had not gone to school or anything, but her faith was incredible. Like she really could move mountains and did up until the very last day. And I saw it with my own eyes because she lived with us for the last 5 years. And her relationship, I realized like there's an inner power that's unexplainable. You brought it up in one of your in your talks when you talked about the fishermen. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have that broad education, but they had something else that that type of relationship and understanding that we kind of need to sometimes focus more on. Another thing you brought up, which I thought, well, this person this really studied this very in depth. Mm-hmm. Right now, I wrote a feature script and a book, and there's a part where I talk about why one of the little girls asked the parents, they're refugees, Iraqi refugees having come to the United States. And she says, Mama and Baba, why do you call us Mama and Baba? Because we say, I say to my son, Mama, I love you. And, and then my husband will say to Baba, and those are terms of endearment to love. And I thought, wow, this man has like, it's like you lived amongst us, like you were raised. That's how much research you've looked into this with your heart. So I would like you to share about that, because I did not realize, sometimes we hear things, because I came to the United States, even though I was born in Baghdad, but I came at a very early age when I was a child. I would like to know, you mentioned that Jesus, there's very few times that he says the word God.
Mhm.
And then you went on and spoke about the father and the mother labels that are brought up. Can you share about that? Because really, it's not just Iraqis, by the way. The Middle East, it's like mama and baba. This is how we speak to our children. And people are like, to us, why are you calling, and there's that confusion because they call us the same thing. And it's like, well, it's like saying dear, my dear, my love.
That's right. And it's so hard for me to get that through to people.
Well, I can understand the confusion naturally.
Yes, that's it. And this is what Jesus was creating when he gave the prayer. He was putting it in the cultural setting, that closeness that you have with mama and papa, that endearment. So when we start the Lord's Prayer, you're really saying, our beloved. You can't get it any stronger than that. That's a term of endearment. When you say, Aun Washmeya, you're actually saying, our beloved who is everywhere. That to me it changes everything for me, totally. Because it brings me in relationship to God, and that's what Jesus taught. Exactly what Jesus taught. It brought me closer to Jesus, and I was totally overwhelmed in the power and presence of God. And I was brought up Roman Catholic. In fact, I was studying for the priesthood, but had left it because, that is not the church, but I had left trying to be a priest because I thought, no, I wanted to marry and, and have a family and children. So that ended that, see. So, but Jesus was even dear to me when I was a child. But once I got the Aramaic, then it opened up to me in a more living way, rather than just as a child, see. And doing the Lord's Prayer and using the term Abba, because I'm using the ancient Aramaic. I know in the way you all say to each other as, Baba and all that, But in fact, my friends who call me, they're Aramaic speaking, and they'll say to me, when they get on the phone, they'll call me Bobby. And I know exactly what they're saying when they say that to me. See? So to me, it's not only a term of endearment, but it brings you very close, which, like we use in English when we say honey and sweetheart and darling and precious. And we say that to children. Doesn't make any difference whether they're a boy or a girl. It makes no difference. We use that same thing. We'll call a little boy precious. We'll call, and husbands and wives will call each other that, But in the Aramaic language, if you have a close friend, you can use that kind of endearment also, which again brings that sense of closeness instead of division and isolation.
Yeah, some of the things that you had mentioned is that really we can't force people, to become loving through legislation, through ways. If we're going to make a shift, and you talk about prayer bringing on that shift.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just really like everything that you were describing regarding how when we are praying, sometimes we are so busy in the prayer and in talking that we can't even hear the prayer. I thought, wow, we don't know how to be silent anymore, and everybody thinks it's like everything has to be very verbal.
Mm-hmm.
And because we live in a materialistic world, in the Western world, it's really materialistic, not just with objects, but even communication is mostly understood on a verbal level, which there's ways to communicate in silence, and that's not sometimes revered in the same way. But you can put all these laws to try to force somebody to to love, but that's not going to teach love. It's just going to make that person restrained from violence until they have that opportunity and snap and then show that side of themselves. Yeah,
You know what I tell people?
to
You
that.
cannot legislate love. Love cannot be legislated. It has to come from here. It has to come from your being. You can't say, thou shalt love. It won't work. It just won't work. As you said, you can't force people to do that. It has to be a reality within themselves. Otherwise, it does not take place. And that's what Jesus said. When he gave those Beatitudes, that's what we call them in English. That comes from Latin. That, again, we're dealing with languages that it did not originally come in. When he gave that, tu echon, what a way to start off with. Tu echon el miskeni bruch, blissful are they, the poor in spirit. Meaning those who are not full of pride, because when you're full of pride, you don't have that love. You don't, because you see yourself superior. So just think how beautiful, the way Jesus started out with his disciples. The first thing he did was commend all those who were poor in pride, who were, that's poor in spirit, the miskene bruch, poor in spirit, meaning you're not prideful, you're not judgmental. And that, when you move those things, when they are not prominent in you, then love manifests itself. You see, Jesus understood all this. And that's why he said blissful. Blissful are they. It means extreme happiness, extreme joy when you have that. I know we always translate that as blessed, but the word there is stronger than blessed. It means to be in an extreme ecstatic state because you are non-judgmental and not full of pride. And what is yours then? Malkuta Dashmeya, the kingdom of heaven. That's what's yours. Jesus knew he could. That's why harlots could feel at home around him. That's why people who were in trouble could feel at home around him. Tax collectors, all these people, they were drawn to him because he emanated this from his own being and showed us a way. This is the true anointed life. That is an anointed life.
And there's a lot that you offer, like even historically, about the first, you mentioned the story of the first Catholic Church in Mesopotamia. Or was that correct? Did I say?
Right, the land of the rivers. We say Beth Naharem, which is the land of the rivers. And literally they say house of the rivers, but it means the land of the rivers, which we call it because of the Greek influence, Mesopotamia, but which again means the same thing, the land of the rivers. But the original church, I mean, they're all over the Near East. It was everywhere. There were seas everywhere, all over in Iraq. Iraq was the real strong birthplace of what we call Christianity today. Today, everyone thinks of Rome and everyone thinks of the Greek. But before Rome, before Greek, you have the ancient Near East, which is in Iraq, and that's where all the early church work was, all over there. It was on the Silk Road. There were places, the first school in Edessa, which was on the Silk Road. The first Aramaic school was there. And when you were coming from China, from all those places, and come right on in the Silk Road, it was through Iraq and all over. Because Iraq, the ancient Near East of Iraq was much bigger than it is today. It embraced part of Syria. It embraced all of that part of Turkey. It embraced all of that. And today, if I mention Iraq, it's more limited. But in the ancient world, it was spread more all over. And this is where the first universal, that's what Catholic means, universal church was established there. And in what language? And how did Jesus' language spread? In Aramaic. Everything he did was in Aramaic, and it all spread. And all the writings were all done in Aramaic. Then later on, it was put into Greek. Once the Greek people began to take hold of it, and the Romans, it was in Nicaea, which was, Turkey. Today it's Turkey. In Nicaea, the only thing that's left in Nicaea is the Roman walls. But that's when Constantine formed the first ecumenical council. This is before they even had popes, in the succession of popes. And it was established, and that's when the church became more doctrinal, when theology became more important than relationship and a sense of oneness. Once it became Roman and Greek, I hope people understand me, I'm not trying to put anything down, but once it did become Roman and Greek, it lost that flow from the Semitic world and became more doctrinal. What do you believe? Not what do you have in you or what you express, but what you believe. And belief became more important than relationship. And that's why doctrine and dogma becomes detrimental to us instead of helpful to us. And all the ecumenical councils, they began to fight over how much of Jesus was God, how much of it wasn't God. And that was all in the Western world. That's not the mind of the Near East.
Yeah, and this has created this, anytime there's these kinds of divides, you end up like losing the essence and the message, the heart of what this is all about. And then when you see that and you see the church fighting, or any religion within their sects kind of fighting against each other, it turns you off, and then you lose the opportunity to learn more about these teachings.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm assuming in the school, in the Aramaic School of Light, you are going to be teaching the language as well as the history. What is the setup going to be? How can people learn more about it?
We're just beginning it, the school.
Yeah.
It's just me and one other. What is that?
How can people find out more about it?
Okay. They need to go to my website, the Nuhra Foundation. That's Noohra, Nuhra Foundation, which means light. And if they go nuhra.org, it'll take them to it. And in it, we have all the information about the school there, and we're just starting out slowly. It's from February to June. It'll be the first Monday of every month. I'm going to be teaching the what we call the Old Testament. I'm going to be teaching Genesis, and I'm going to go into the first chapter of Genesis, the meaning of God, but all from the Semitic point of view. It's not going to be, and it's based on Aramaic. I'll explain the meaning of God, halacha, what that means in Aramaic. And when it comes into English, it's lost. And so I'm going to be going into that and creation and what are we? When God said, let us make humankind our image and our likeness, what does that mean? And what do the Aramaic words mean in there? See, and it'll be the first Monday of every month for 90 minutes. And I'll also open it for questions. And it's going to be we're going to do it by faith on a love offering basis. And we're suggesting at least $20, for each class, but it's up to the people, because I know people are having a hard time right now too. So I didn't want to exclude anyone, and this is the only way I can do that. And then on the third Monday, I have Reverend Hanny Freewatt, who will be doing the teachings of Jesus. He's going to take the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus, and I'm going to go into the Old Testament, explaining, Abraham, all of the patriarchs, and also the teachings there. Now, the Aramaic language, I will probably be starting that up also in February, but I haven't set the date for that yet. But I'm teaching I don't teach how to speak the language. I'm teaching how to read it, how to read scripture. If they want to read about the church fathers, how to read them, the Aramaic speaking church fathers, and the meanings that they had. And Father Michael Bazzi and we put together this. First, it was just he and I. We put this book together, the Classical Aramaic, and
is that available at Let in the Light Publishing?
Yes.
Where can people, Let in the Light Publishing? Okay. So
and also, you see all these books here? I don't know, can they see that?
Yes.
All the commentaries from Aramaic. I start with this one here, Aramaic Light on Genesis here, all from the Aramaic language. And I keep it simple. I try to stay away from dogma and doctrine, and the way I just stay away from the theological heavy end of it. And it's just simply with the culture. It's the commentary based on the Aramaic language and the ancient Near Eastern culture. It's a whole set of them. Dr. Lamsa and I did this together. First, he did it years ago in the 30s and 40s, and then he and I worked together, but he passed on before he could finish it, and I finished it and added more material to it. And I go from Genesis to Revelation. This is Genesis to Revelation. That's available on the website, the Nuchra Foundation.
That's wonderful. I mean, we are very grateful that you and others like you are doing this type of work, because you are allowing, you're documenting, preserving the language, and even just the history, sharing these stories. And we get to, I get to learn a lot. I mean, this is my heritage, and I learned so much just by listening to you, as well as, feeling that our stories are heard. I know for a very long time, the Chaldeans and other minorities in Iraq felt like our stories are, placed on the side because it wasn't that important, because it seemed like we're even almost extinct, which we're not, but we're getting to, it feels like we're getting to that point. But what I have found is people like yourself, once they discover the existence and the importance of this, then they really have been proactive, and we're very grateful for that.
Yes, with Father Michael Bazzi, I searched all over, after Rabbi Lamsa passed, I searched all over for someone else. I didn't know that you even had the Chaldean Center here, didn't know about it. And when I met Father Michael, he was trying to find me. He had heard I've been spreading this all over. I've been spreading this all over Europe and all for years. I've been doing it since 1962. And spreading it all over in German. Now in Germany, they're translating the 4 Gospels. They've already done it from Aramaic into English. Now it's available in the German language. And because I've been spreading it everywhere, it's just going everywhere, because it's time people realize there's more to it. And you are so fortunate, let me tell you, to have been brought up in that atmosphere and in that culture. I mean, and we were needing this in the Western world, and we need it badly now. We need it badly. That love and the truth, the simplicity of Jesus' teaching that can transform and change us, where we can love each other and not hurt each other.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate all your work, and we appreciate that you came here and did this interview today. The segment is recorded, so we will be sharing it on our website and on social media for anybody who have missed it, along with the links to your website. Again, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us. Any last words, Dr. Errico?
Thank you. I appreciate everything.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, everybody.